The doll that moved on Halloween night. This happened about 7 years ago, fittingly on Halloween night. It was quite late, almost midnight, so all the kids in the neighborhood had already gone home. Even our neighbors across the street had stopped playing their cheesy Halloween tape. You know, the ones with creaking door sounds and witch cackles. It was just me and my cousin Sarah sitting in the living room. My other cousin, who was about 4 years old at the time, had left her doll lying on the floor face down. It was one of those baby alive dolls or something similar, the ones with moving eyelids. Sarah had issues with that doll from the moment it was bought. She hated it and said it was creepy. In fact, she often threw it down the basement stairs. I had no problems with it, so it stayed on the floor so my little cousin could pick it up in the morning. It was very quiet for about half an hour until I heard a loud rasping noise that seemed to be coming from outside. It sounded like an older man right outside our window. I turned to Sarah, who looked back at me. "Did you hear that?" I asked. "Probably the neighbor's tape again," she said, going back to typing on her computer. It was silent for another minute before we heard the rasping noise again, louder this time. It sounded like the man was trying to say something. I got up from the couch and peeked out the window. Absolutely no one out there, not even in the street. Our neighbor's house was dark. It was as still as any night in our quiet neighborhood. "There's no one out there," I said, looking back at Sarah. She didn't say anything. I was starting to get freaked out. Another minute passed, and this time there was whispering, but loud whispering. I remember it sounded like a kid and a woman. Sarah finally looked up from her computer. "It's that doll," she said. Of course, she thought it was. She was very superstitious. I gave her a skeptical look. Let me say this, I don't believe in the paranormal. I went down and picked up the doll. It was fine. Her eyes were closed. I forgot to mention that it had a voice box, but it didn't have any batteries. I put it back down. "No, it's not. Just leave it alone," I told her. It was silent again. I went back to my seat on the couch. The rasping started again, and I heard the man say something garbled, followed by wheezing. I jumped up from the couch. I was going to see if it was coming from the backyard. Just as I started walking, I noticed that the doll had moved a little. I picked it up again and turned it over. Its eyes were open, and it was heavier than before. I dropped it, and Sarah threw it down the basement stairs again. I still have no idea what to think. Sarah denies it ever happened, and my little cousin never asked about her doll after that. I saw the doll only one time after that, on the top basement step, lying on its side. This time, I pushed it down the steps. Tom, the creepy friend. My parents are divorced, and I was living with my dad. Being an only child, the only time I was around kids my age was when I went out to make friends in the neighborhood. There was one kid who lived on the corner of my block named Tom. I met him while riding my bike. He strangely invited me over to shoot some hoops, so I agreed. He was a lot older than me. I was 12, and he was 16. After hanging out with him for a while, I found out that he was also an only child and lived only with his dad. At first, I found him very relatable. I gave him my phone number, and he would call to hang out. Sometimes he would come over to play video games, but then he started acting weird. He would call non-stop, and if I didn't answer, he would leave annoyed messages. He would call 5 or 6 times before coming over and ringing the doorbell. If my dad was home, I usually didn't answer, but when he was, he would force me to hang out with Tom, even though I told him Tom was creepy. I biked with Tom back to his house while pretending to listen to him ramble on about nonsense. This kid would never shut up. I needed to find a way to get him to stop looking for me. Then, for the first time, he invited me into his house. I really didn't want to go in, but it didn't seem like I had a choice. The second I walked through the door, the foul, disgusting odor of his house filled my lungs. Clothes were scattered all over the floor, broken glass in one corner of the room, and what looked like coffee stains on the wall. It was the most disgusting place I'd ever seen. Then a huge, shady-looking man walked out from another room. He looked at me with a very intimidating look. I found myself backing away from him until Tom introduced him as his father. The man just grunted and stomped off into another room. It was official. This kid was a complete creep. I needed to get away from him for good. I decided I didn't even want to be in that house anymore and made up some excuse to leave. I think I said I had a doctor's appointment, and at that moment, his smile slowly faded into an unhappy, if not extremely angry expression. He didn't even respond. He just looked at me with this unsettling stare. I hurried out of there and ran back down the block to my house. The door was locked, surprisingly. I unlocked it with the key my dad made me carry and found that he wasn't home. I really wanted him to be home. Then I found a little sticky note on the fridge saying he was called into work for a possible storm emergency. That night, before going to sleep, I checked my email for a response from someone on eBay, but instead I had about 5 new emails, all titled in capital letters, and they were all sent from an email named tomtom20@aol.com. It was him. I never gave him my email and still have no idea how he got it. One of the emails was titled, "You made a mistake." Another was titled, "I know where you live," and the rest were filled with profanity and threats. I was only 12 and was extremely intimidated by this, so I was ready to call my dad, but as soon as I was heading to the kitchen phone, I heard the sound of rustling bushes outside. I opened the blinds of the window facing the bushes and was greeted by the face of a huge man who I instantly recognized as Tom's dad. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, he was already gone. When my dad came home early because of this situation, he immediately went to get a restraining order. Tom and his dad moved out about a month after that. Man in the closet. It happened on my friend's 21st birthday. We were throwing a big party with plenty of alcohol. There were a lot of people I didn't know. The house was chaotic, probably with about 100 people. But even in all that chaos, I noticed a suspicious man who stood out. He was an older guy sitting in the corner of the room, just watching everyone drink and dance. At first, I didn't think much of it, assuming he was someone's dad or uncle. But as the night went on and more than half the guests had left, the man was still there, alone in the corner. At that point, I asked one of my friends who the guy was, and he said he had no idea. We decided to wait until most of the guests had left, figuring maybe he would leave too. When the last of the guests were gone, we went back to the living room, and sure enough, he was gone. I immediately felt relieved, even though it wasn't my house. That man just seemed so out of place and downright creepy. A few friends and I decided to sleep over that night. I slept on the couch in the basement. Falling asleep was easy with all the alcohol in my system, but staying asleep was a problem. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling insanely thirsty and needing to use the bathroom. First, I went to the bathroom since it was closer, and then I headed to the kitchen to get a glass of water. When I went back down to the basement and lay back down on the couch, I noticed that the sliding door to the coat closet across from the couch was slightly open. It was too dark to see anything inside, but a chill ran down my spine as I remembered the creepy man sitting in the corner. The idea that the man was hiding in the closet immediately came to mind. I continued to lie still, assuming he was watching me through the open door of the closet. I began to plan my escape. I could jump over the other couch and land right next to the stairway leading upstairs. I just needed to gather the courage to do it. Then I saw the closet door slide open a little more, and that's when I mustered the courage to run for it. I jumped over the couch and ran up the stairs. I could hear the closet door fully slide open and someone running after me. I screamed at my friends who were on the couches to wake up. All 3 of my friends who were in the living room woke up and looked at me as if I were crazy. I knew that we now outnumbered him 4-1, so I looked at the stairs and waited, but he never came up. My friends demanded an explanation, so I told them that the creepy man from earlier was hiding in the coat closet and almost chased me up the stairs. Just then, we heard the back door from down in the basement open up. We all looked at each other. We called the police, but the man was never found. He simply left through the back door. My name is Damian Blackwood. Thank you for listening to this horror story on Stories to Keep You Awake. I hope you enjoyed it and felt the same tension I did while telling it. If you liked it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more scary stories. Until the next night of terror.